The university hall was drowning in black caps and gowns, cameras flashing against proud faces, parents clutching enormous bouquets, and the air thick with academic triumph that tasted like champagne and validation. My sister stood at the center, her doctoral hood draped perfectly, surrounded by admirers congratulating her on becoming Dr. Perfect. I stood off to the side, half hidden behind a marble column, holding a small bouquet that suddenly felt pathetic, watching the performance unfold like an extra in someone else's movie. That's when Mrs. Henderson approached my mother with polite curiosity and asked the question I had been dreading. "And what is your other child doing now? Are they in academia too?" My mother's face did that thing it always does when I'm mentioned, that slight tightening around the eyes, that forced smile, and she said, loud enough for half the hall to hear, "Honestly, I don't think they'll ever really make it. Not everyone is PhD material, you know. Some people are just built differently." The words hit like a physical blow. My stomach dropped, my hands went numb, my smile froze into that terrible fake expression people wear when dying inside. But here's what my mother didn't know. Sitting in my bag at that exact moment was an official letter confirming my $7.6 million research grant. $7.6 million. My name as Principal Investigator, my research, my validation so concrete it made my sister's achievement look modest by comparison, and my mother had no idea it existed. Standing in the shadow of my sister's achievement, listening to my mother casually declare I would never amount to anything while holding literal proof that I had secured one of the largest research grants in my field, felt like the setup to a revenge story so perfect even I couldn't have scripted it better. Cold rage started somewhere deep in my chest, mixing with years of accumulated hurt and the exhausting weight of never being enough. But I didn't explode. I didn't scream. I took a slow breath, adjusted my grip on those pathetic flowers, and let the moment hang like smoke. Because I knew something they didn't. The real graduation moment was still coming, and it was going to be mine. For as long as I can remember, my mother operated under a simple family structure. There is the golden child who will save the family legacy, and then there is me. My sister was always the real academic, the serious one, the child who inherited good genes and intellectual capacity. Meanwhile, I was the messy one, the unfocused creative type who shouldn't be taken seriously. This wasn't a narrative that developed over time. This was established doctrine from childhood, reinforced at every opportunity with casual cruelty parents mistake for honesty. Every achievement of mine came with an asterisk. When I won first place in the regional science competition at 12, my mother said, "That's good, but your sister's work is on another level. Don't compare yourself." When report cards came home, the contrast was brutal. My sister's A- got framed, posted on social media, discussed at dinner as proof of her brilliant future. I brought home straight A's, sometimes A+ with exceptional teacher comments, and my mother would glance once and say, "You're just lucky. Don't get cocky. Real intelligence is about depth, not grades." The message was clear. My sister's mediocre efforts were genius, my exceptional efforts were accidents. The emotional blackmail started early, disguised as practical planning. At 14, excited about a summer research program, I brought home the application. My mother sighed and said, "Family resources are limited. We have to put them where they'll count. Your sister needs to focus on college applications. You're creative. You'll figure something out." The subtext was deafening. You are not the investment. While my sister got tutors, test prep, college counseling, and endless support, I got vague encouragement and suggestions to find something more practical than research science. When I expressed interest in advanced degrees, my mother actually laughed. "Graduate school is expensive and competitive. Your sister is built for that world. You should think about teaching high school or something hands-on." The implication that I wasn't smart enough wasn't even subtle. It was stated as a biological fact. But what they didn't see, I was grinding harder than anyone imagined, late nights in labs as an unpaid research assistant while my mother assumed I was exploring hobbies, writing papers nobody at home read, getting published in respectable venues while my family discussed my sister's undergraduate thesis like groundbreaking literature, applying for tiny grants, building a portfolio of funded projects and citations with zero genuine support, attending conferences on my own dime, networking with researchers who actually saw potential, building relationships with mentors who became more family than my actual family. The pattern was almost funny. My sister would mention maybe applying for a fellowship, and my mother would spend weeks helping, reading drafts, making connections. I would actually win a research award, and my mother would say, "Oh, that's nice," and immediately change the subject. For years, the narrative was fixed. One child is the genius, the real academic. The other is a creative mess, a disappointment waiting to happen. The moment that broke something inside me happened 6 months before my sister's ceremony, on an unremarkable Tuesday in my mother's kitchen. I had driven over to share genuinely exciting news. I sat at the kitchen table where I had endured countless comparative dinners and started explaining a major research grant I was applying for. This wasn't some small institutional award. This was multi-year, nationally competitive, career-defining. I talked about proposal drafts, partner institutions, potential impact, how this could change my entire career trajectory. My mother was doing dishes, back half-turned, attention drifting. When I paused, she sighed in that particular way that means she's delivering a truth she thinks I need. These things aren't for people like you. You can't even stick to one project. Why don't you be realistic and find a stable job instead of chasing big research money fantasies? You're not your sister. You don't have her focus or discipline. The words hit like a physical blow. My stomach dropped. My hands went numb. My smile froze into that terrible fake expression people wear when dying inside. But here's what my mother didn't know. Sitting in my bag at that exact moment was an official letter confirming my $7.6 million research grant. $7.6 million. My name as Principal Investigator, my research, my validation, so concrete it made my sister's achievement look modest by comparison, and my mother had no idea it existed. Standing in the shadow of my sister's achievement, listening to my mother casually declare I would never amount to anything while holding literal proof that I had secured one of the largest research grants in my field, felt like the setup to a revenge story so perfect even I couldn't have scripted it better. Cold rage started somewhere deep in my chest, mixing with years of accumulated hurt and the exhausting weight of never being enough. But I didn't explode. I didn't scream. I took a slow breath, adjusted my grip on those pathetic flowers, and let the moment hang like smoke. Because I knew something they didn't. The real graduation moment was still coming, and it was going to be mine. For as long as I can remember, my mother operated under a simple family structure. There is the golden child who will save the family legacy, and then there is me. My sister was always the real academic, the serious one, the child who inherited good genes and intellectual capacity. Meanwhile, I was the messy one, the unfocused creative type who shouldn't be taken seriously. This wasn't a narrative that developed over time. This was established doctrine from childhood, reinforced at every opportunity with casual cruelty parents mistake for honesty. Every achievement of mine came with an asterisk. When I won first place in the regional science competition at 12, my mother said, "That's good, but your sister's work is on another level. Don't compare yourself." When report cards came home, the contrast was brutal. My sister's A- got framed, posted on social media, discussed at dinner as proof of her brilliant future. I brought home straight A's, sometimes A+ with exceptional teacher comments, and my mother would glance once and say, "You're just lucky. Don't get cocky. Real intelligence is about depth, not grades." The message was clear. My sister's mediocre efforts were genius, my exceptional efforts were accidents. The emotional blackmail started early, disguised as practical planning. At 14, excited about a summer research program, I brought home the application. My mother sighed and said, "Family resources are limited. We have to put them where they'll count. Your sister needs to focus on college applications. You're creative. You'll figure something out." The subtext was deafening. You are not the investment. While my sister got tutors, test prep, college counseling, and endless support, I got vague encouragement and suggestions to find something more practical than research science. When I expressed interest in advanced degrees, my mother actually laughed. "Graduate school is expensive and competitive. Your sister is built for that world. You should think about teaching high school or something hands-on." The implication that I wasn't smart enough was
I left with shaking hands and clenched jaw. I didn't argue or defend. I just nodded, thanked her for untouched tea, and drove home in silence. The hurt would come later in waves during long nights questioning whether she was right, but determination came faster. I was done begging for her belief. From that moment, my goal wasn't to make her proud. My goal was to succeed so spectacularly her opinion became irrelevant. The real discovery wasn't that my mother underestimated me. I had known that my entire life. The real discovery was how deep and systematic her dismissal went, how thoroughly she had written me out of the family success story. A few weeks after that kitchen conversation, I found old emails while searching for something unrelated. My mother had written to extended family for a newsletter update. The email about my sister was 3 paragraphs, detailing every award, honor, achievement with radiating pride. She described my sister's thesis as pioneering, mentioned grad school acceptances, listed scholarships, and ended with glowing predictions about her brilliant future. The section about me was 2 sentences. "The other one is doing fine, working on some projects. We hope they find their way eventually." Years of my research, publications, conference presentations, documented achievements reduced to doing fine. I read those lines repeatedly, feeling something crack inside. I started paying more attention. I overheard my mother on the phone with my aunt discussing family news. She spent 20 minutes on my sister's dissertation progress, then my aunt apparently asked about me because her tone shifted completely. "We just hope she succeeds at something eventually. The other one, well, they'll survive somehow. Not everyone can be exceptional." She said it so casually, like accepted fact that I was the family disappointment. The small humiliations made sense in this context, being told not to embarrass the family at academic events where my sister presented, as if my presence was a liability. Being asked to take photos at gatherings instead of being in them, literally positioned as documentarian of other people's success. Hearing relatives call me the artistic one in that condescending tone, meaning not smart enough for real work. Watching my mother beam introducing my sister as getting her PhD in molecular biology, then introducing me with just my other child, full stop. But the hardest discovery? Somewhere along the way, my actual academic family became more supportive than my biological one. Dr. Martinez read every draft I wrote with detailed feedback within 24 hours. She sent opportunities, nominated me for awards, pushed me toward bigger grants, told me regularly my work was important. Professor Chen invited me to co-author papers, included me in high-level meetings, treated my ideas with respect and genuine curiosity. These people, with no biological obligation, invested more in my career in 2 years than my mother had in my entire life. My mother hadn't just underestimated me. She had actively, consistently, systematically written me out of the narrative of success. She positioned my sister as the sole repository of family achievement, and me as the cautionary tale, the backup plan, the child who hopefully wouldn't embarrass everyone too badly. And she did it so thoroughly, with such conviction, that even I almost started believing it. After that brutal kitchen dismissal, after years of accumulated disappointment crystallized into cold determination, I made a decision that felt like stepping into a new version of myself.
I was done begging for recognition. I wasn't going to fight for her belief anymore. I was going to fight for my work and let results speak for themselves. I poured everything into that grant application. Months of revisions, late nights, restructuring arguments, strengthening methodology, gathering data, crafting impact statements demonstrating scientific and societal value. My mentors believed in me when my mother didn't. Dr. Martinez spent hours on video calls helping me refine the proposal. Professor Chen connected me with collaborators at other institutions. Dr. Okafor from the funding agency gave feedback on early drafts and encouraged me to think bigger, be more ambitious, stop underselling my work's potential. At home, I told my family almost nothing. When my mother asked what I was working on, I gave vague answers like, just working on a proposal, in a tone suggesting it wasn't worth discussing. I watched her eyes glaze with disinterest, watched her nod absently and change the subject back to my sister's dissertation, and I felt nothing. No hurt, no disappointment, just cold clarity that her opinion was irrelevant to my actual life. Let her think it would go nowhere. The truth would arrive soon enough. I kept meticulous records, acceptance letters from journals, conference invitations from prestigious symposiums, letters of support from leading researchers, early positive signals as my application moved through review stages. When the grant panel moved my application to the final round, beating hundreds of proposals from researchers at top institutions worldwide, I told no one in my family. I just kept working, preparing for when the decision would finally come. The timing felt like the universe writing the perfect revenge story. The grant agency would announce final decisions in late spring. My sister's PhD ceremony was scheduled for early June. The dates would almost certainly overlap. There was a real chance I would get the grant decision during the exact weekend my family gathered to celebrate my sister's achievement, the weekend entirely focused on proving once again that she was successful and I was just the disappointing footnote. The goal wasn't traditional revenge, it was liberation. It was the end of a story my mother had been telling about me since childhood. When that grant came through, it would be proof, undeniable and quantified in millions of dollars, that her assessment of my capabilities was catastrophically wrong, and she would have to confront that reality not in private where she could dismiss it, but in public, in front of the entire family, in the middle of a celebration supposed to reinforce her preferred narrative. The PhD ceremony was everything my mother dreamed of for the golden child. The auditorium was packed with proud families, distinguished faculty, and academic pageantry that makes parents cry. My sister looked genuinely happy on stage, and I felt complicated pride for her achievement, mixed with deep loneliness about my own position in the family narrative. After the ceremony, we moved to the reception. My mother was glowing, working the room like a politician, telling everyone, "We always knew she'd make it. From when she was little, we could tell she had what it takes." Then she would add with a sad headshake, "Not everyone has what it takes to survive in academia. You need a certain kind of mind." I stood near the refreshment table holding champagne I wasn't drinking, watching my mother perform her favorite role, proud parent of the exceptional child. Mrs. Henderson came by with a sympathetic expression about how proud my mother must be of both children. My mother's smile tightened and she started to deliver another dismissive comment when my phone buzzed. I pulled it out reflexively, expecting spam. Instead, I saw an email from the grant agency and my heart stopped. The subject line read, "Application number 47829, final decision, confidential." My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the phone. I stepped away from the conversation, walked quickly to the lobby, found a quiet corner near a marble pillar, took a breath that felt like it might crack my ribs, and opened the email. The first word was "Congratulations" in bold. My vision blurred. I read it 3 times before my brain processed the content. "We are pleased to inform you that your research proposal has been selected for funding. Total award amount $7,600,000 over 5 years. As Principal Investigator, you will have full autonomy over project direction and resource allocation." The number sat there in black and white, undeniable, real, mine. $7.6 million. My research, my name, my career officially launched at a level most academics never reach. I stood in that marble lobby and felt years of accumulated hurt crack apart. Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't sad tears. They were tears that come when something you've wanted desperately, worked for with every piece of yourself, something everyone told you was impossible, suddenly becomes real. I let myself have that moment of private triumph, of validation so complete it was almost overwhelming. Then I wiped my face, took a deep breath, and walked back into the reception with surreal calm. The timing was perfect cosmic justice. I walked back in just as people started mingling and asking standard small talk questions. A colleague of my sister's asked politely, "So, what are you up to these days? Are you in research too?" I smiled, and it was real this time, not the fake frozen thing. "Actually, my grant just got funded today, like literally just now. I just got the email." The colleague looked interested but not particularly impressed. "Oh, that's great. What kind of grant?" I pulled out my phone, still displaying the email, and showed them. Multi-year research initiative from the National Science Foundation, $7.6 million. I watched their expression change in real time, from polite interest to genuine shock. Their jaw literally dropped. "I'm sorry, did you say 7.6 million, as in millions with an M?" I nodded, feeling strange calm. "Yes, I'm the principal investigator, 5-year project, total funding $7.6 million. The conversation around us went completely quiet. People turned to look, to listen, to process what they had just heard. My sister's eyes were wide with something between shock and genuine happiness. Professor Chen, there as one of my sister's committee members and who knew about my application, broke into a huge smile and said loudly, "Are you serious? You got the NSF grant? Do you know how competitive that is?" Before I could answer, he turned to the group explaining, "That's one of the most prestigious research grants in the field. 7.6 million is bigger than most entire department budgets. She beat out proposals from Harvard, MIT, Stanford. This is extraordinary." I watched my mother's face drain of all color. She was standing 10 feet away, and I could see her processing the information in real time, trying to reconcile the number with the narrative she had constructed about my capabilities. $7.6 million. Principal Investigator. National Science Foundation. Words that didn't fit with "you'll never make it" or "not PhD material." Relatives gathered around, asking to see the official letter, congratulating me, asking about the research. I showed them the email, let them read the letterhead, the funding amount, the project title with my name as PI. Mrs. Henderson, who had asked my mother about me earlier, looked at the email, then at my mother with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Didn't you just say earlier your other child would never make it in academia?" she asked, voice carefully neutral. The silence was complete. I could hear air conditioning humming. My mother opened her mouth, closed it, then tried to laugh like it had been a joke. I just meant it's a difficult field. I never said." Her voice trailed off as everyone stared at her, the lie so transparent it was almost embarrassing. I didn't grandstand, I didn't throw the grant in her face or make a speech about how wrong she had been. I just stood there, answering questions about research, accepting congratulations, letting the number speak for itself. $7.6 million. It echoed through the reception like a bell that couldn't be unrung, and every time someone said it, I watched my mother flinch like being physically struck. About an hour after the news broke, my mother found me in a quiet hallway outside the reception. Her face was a complicated mix of anger, embarrassment, and something that might have been shame. She looked around to make sure no one could overhear, then spoke in a tight, controlled voice, shaking with barely suppressed fury. "You made a spectacle. You showed off and ruined your sister's day. This was supposed to be about her achievement, and you had to make it about you and your grant. Do you have any idea how embarrassing that was for me? People are going to think I'm a terrible mother who doesn't know her own children." Her voice was rising, years of needing to control the narrative spilling out. I looked at her for a long moment, feeling remarkably calm. When I spoke, my voice was quiet but steady. I spent years hearing I'd never make it, even while publishing more papers than most PhD students, winning awards, building a research portfolio, getting national recognition. You told people I wasn't serious, wasn't capable, wasn't PhD material. You said it to my face and behind my back. You turned my sister into your investment and treated me like a bad stock you were waiting to write off. She started to protest, but I kept talking. You kept telling everyone I'd never make it to that level, that big grants were for serious researchers, that I should leave important work to my sister. But the grant committee disagreed. They disagreed to the tune of $7.6 million. They looked at my research, my track record, my potential, and made me principal investigator of a multi-year national research initiative. That's not luck. That's not a fluke. That's years of work you never acknowledged because you were too busy being disappointed I wasn't your golden child. My mother's face cycled through emotions, trying different approaches to regain control. First came denial. That's not fair. We always supported both of you equally. We wanted the best for both our children. I almost laughed at the blatantly of the lie. I told you 3 months ago in your kitchen that you would never make it to this level. You laughed when I mentioned
Applying for this grant. You told me to be realistic and find a stable job. That's not support, that's active discouragement based on your fixed belief I'm not capable of serious academic achievement. Then came guilt, or the performance of it. We didn't know you were capable of this. You never told us about all these publications and awards. How are we supposed to know? The absurdity was almost beautiful. I told you every time I got published. I told you about conference presentations, about awards. You just didn't listen because it didn't fit your narrative. You didn't want to know because knowing would have required admitting you were wrong about me. Finally came self-pity. Do you have any idea how hard parenting is? We did the best we could with what we knew. You can't punish us for not being perfect. We were just trying to protect you from disappointment. I felt something harden in my chest, that final click of a door closing. You don't get to do this. You don't get to call me a failure in public and then try to claim my success in public. You don't get to spend years telling everyone I'll never make it and then act hurt when I prove you wrong without giving you credit. Your assessment of my capabilities was very clear, publicly, repeatedly, with conviction. The fact that your assessment was catastrophically wrong is not my problem to manage for you. She looked genuinely shocked, like she had expected me to back down, to let her rewrite history into something more comfortable. So what are you saying? Are you just going to cut us off? Punish your family for not being supportive enough? I shook my head slowly. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm drawing a boundary. From now on, you can say whatever you want about my work, my capabilities, my future. You can believe whatever narrative makes you comfortable, but I won't be there to listen to it, and I won't be there to fix your image when reality contradicts what you've been saying. I took a breath and delivered the line I had been building toward. I'm not asking for your approval anymore. I'm not asking for your belief. The National Science Foundation already gave me their answer, and their answer came with $7.6 million and my name as Principal Investigator. Your opinion is optional. Your support is optional. Your relationship with me going forward is optional, and I'm choosing to make it all conditional on respect I should have been given years ago. I walked away then, leaving her standing in that hallway with her mouth open and her carefully constructed narrative crumbling like paper in rain. I didn't feel triumphant exactly. I felt exhausted and sad and relieved and free all at once. The weight I had been carrying for years, the weight of her disappointment and dismissal and certainty that I would never be enough, suddenly lifted off my shoulders like I had been holding my breath underwater and finally broke the surface. If you're watching this and you've ever been the underestimated child, the one your parents didn't believe in, the one compared unfavorably to a sibling at every opportunity, understand something that took me decades to learn.
Sometimes the people who raise you are the last ones to recognize what you've grown into. They get so attached to the story they wrote about you when you were young, the role they assigned you in the family narrative, that they can't see evidence contradicting it even when it's staring them in the face. And that limitation is theirs, not yours. Parents aren't infallible gods with special insight into your capabilities. They're just people with opinions, and sometimes those opinions are based on nothing more than their own fears, insecurities, their need to organize their children into need categories that make sense to them. If they keep betting against you, if they keep dismissing your achievements and predicting your failure, you are allowed, even required, to bet on yourself instead. You are allowed to build your success with people who actually believe in you, even if those people aren't related by blood. You are allowed to prove them wrong and then walk away without apologizing for it. At my sister's PhD ceremony, my mother said I'd never make it. She said it casually, like obvious fact, like my entire trajectory was already determined and sealed. She was right about one thing: I didn't make it to her definition of success. I didn't fit neatly into the category she created for me. I didn't stay small and grateful and appropriately disappointed with my limitations. I built something bigger than her imagination could contain. I built a $7.6 million research project with my name on it, with national recognition, with institutional backing that proved every single dismissive comment she ever made was wrong. And I built a life where her belief in me is optional, where her approval is not required, where her narrative about my capabilities has exactly as much power as I choose to give it, which from now on is absolutely none.